Hello, 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 and welcome to our newest episode of Pop Culture Therapy. I'm Cruellica Kain.
Hello everybody, it's Nebula. We're back for another Horror Month episode.
So this time we're actually going to be talking about how horror has been evolving, especially with all of the streaming platforms. And I know everybody thinks when they think of horror and streaming, Shudder, but they are catering simply just to horror. I'm thinking more of Hulu, Netflix, and
Amazon.
HBO.
Also, you got to think about Amazon as well.
Because the reason why I'm excluding Disney from this is because currently they have not initiated the process to start including more of their adults or horror content.
Yeah, their adult and horror content that they got from Fox are all Hulu exclusives.
Pretty much. So, and I don't know if that'll be changing, so we're just going to focus on all of the other mainstream platforms. So, when I think of a lot of the horror, is looking at specifically Netflix for the moment, you have two big streaming things that have come up recently. You have Sweet Girl, which has Jason Momoa.
Which I have heard a lot of positive about on that.
It's very good.
And then Squid Game, which is a survival horror, which has blown up the internet.
It really has. Everywhere you go, everybody is talking about Squid Game. Now, obviously, Squid Game is not an American property. It is a Korean property. But the one thing that Netflix is doing well compared to all of their counterparts for an American audience is we're including Korean, Japanese, Russian, Spanish.
They don't really care as long as it has good writing and they see that it can sell itself. Netflix will take the risk.
And the benefit of Netflix is, since there's so many people on the platform, they really don't have to do a lot of networking. Because think of last year with Tiger King.
Yeah.
Netflix really did not market that by any means. It was the community.
Yeah, a lot of people online with Tiger King started going, hey, check this out, started trending on social media, and boom. Same thing has happened with Squid Game.
Squid Game, Sweet Girl, or even previously, with, I believe it's Martin Freeman, Cargo, the zombie movie.
Yep. And also, you gotta look, they took a risk with Zack Snyder earlier this year, too, with his zombie film.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yes, they are willing to take the risks.
And now Hulu, what they're doing is they're taking a lot of different movies. A lot of them are originals or things that have come from the Fox property that they're able to promote on their own channel. Like one I watched, which was called The Haunts. And then you also have Antebellum, which is such a mind fuck, so to speak. And when you have the streaming platforms doing something that the theaters are not doing anymore, really, it makes you wonder, how is horror going to evolve? Because when you're on the streaming platforms, yes, you do have to cater somewhat to the rating systems of PG all the way to R. But you can blur the lines a little bit more where you can kind of get closer to the unrated world.
Which is exactly what Amazon Prime is doing by licensing Arrow Video's stuff, which a lot of their content there from Arrow Video is unrated. And they're branching out with all of that stuff right now. And yeah, some of the stuff that's there, you're going back in the day, like they have some of the 70s exploitation films, and then they have modern horror to older horror films from the 70s and 80s that would be considered exploitation horror that have no rating whatsoever because they were originally rated X when they came out.
Yes, because at that time, X was basically NC-17. And that's where Triple X came from, because Triple X meant more of the true adults. And you don't really see that much anymore either,
No.
mainly because the internet has proliferated a way for everybody to be able to see it without any issue. Which is probably going to make Pee Wee Herman very happy.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have streaming services take over the horror market, you have to question then, okay, what are the barriers to entry?
The thing is, and I'm thinking this is what it is, and something we were talking about earlier, which we'll bring up in another podcast later, Hollywood's gotten to the point where there's only two types of movies they'll make. High-budget movies or low-risk indie films. There's no in-between market anymore, and what's filling that gap? The streaming services, because they're willing to throw the money at the middle ground.
And that's exactly it. Because the streaming services, they don't necessarily know their audience. Because unlike everything else, Hollywood-wise, Hollywood makes for a compartmentalized audience that they know they're going to get in the door. Streaming services has to cater to a very wide range of audiences.
And they're willing to take the risk. They know they're not going to hit every time, but for whatever reason, when they get a hit, they're going to make a profit.
And their profit comes in viewership and subscriptions. And now I know a lot of people can make the comment, well, with the subscriptions, you can get a 7-day trial. However, companies are starting to monitor that.
Yep, Netflix is already, and it's going to start with the first big property later this year, with The Witcher going to a weekly release on Netflix. Netflix is going to do away with its binge format here in the next couple of years. And Amazon's already done away with it, and so have several of the others.
And the reason why we point that out is because horror is going to evolve into possibly something that I actually truly enjoy. And that's those story-based collections like you have with Creepshow.
Which has been Shudder's hit original.
And then you have Squid Game now, you have Slasher, you have 2-minute horror stories. There's so many different formats where they're doing series versus 2-hour-long movies. And while the 2-hour-long movies I don't see going away because those are flashbang where everybody can enjoy, with having these collections, especially like Tales of the Dark Side, because I know they're trying to revive that, you're going to have so much out there.
Well, look what CBS did with Paramount Plus and the new Twilight Zone, making it exclusive there.
Exactly, and having it come out week to week. And yeah, you could say, well, I'll wait until the entire series is done and do that. That's certainly fine, but you lose the experience. And streaming is definitely taking advantage of that because they want to create this community where they're going to have people checking in. That's why even American Horror Story did something different by having American Horror Stories.
Yep.
Where it was each week a different tale, not even in the same universe. Now the first episode and the last episode did deal with Murder House for the first season, but it varies so widely on what you're going to have.
Yeah, and then you're seeing Amazon even going on the family horror route. They bought up the license Hotel Transylvania, even though they can't have Adam Sandler involved because of his Netflix contract. Mm-hmm. They have that property, and they're even involving the kids now, but that got delayed to January because of Sony.
Well, you can even say that with Has Been Hotel.
Yeah, HBO Max picking that up with A24.
Exactly, and so you have something like that, which the amount of popularity of a horror animated series off just a pilot.
That is aimed at adults, and it's a musical.
And the fact that you have just a 30-minute pilot blowing up shows that streaming horror is definitely taking a different view because people have more access. Because the problem with going to movie theaters, which I know they'll change and we'll talk about in another one, is that if it goes to theaters only, you have to wait between 3 to 6 months for streaming and or a home video release.
Not anymore. Home video release is now 30 days. What they
Well, some can take
Yeah.
a little bit longer, but no, that's fair. Even 30 days, depending on the audience, we have so much content coming out. 30 days, in my opinion, can be too long.
Yeah, especially in the hypermarket we are now in.
And I know one of the conflicts of having streaming platforms is you have HBO, Amazon. I'm still going to exclude Disney. So you have Hulu, you have Netflix, you have Paramount. So that's 5, and Shudder. So that's 6 major streaming
Yeah,
platforms.
because Peacock has not gone into the horror yet, and we'll give NBC some time on that.
Yes. And with Tubi, they're a free platform.
Yeah,
so I'm
Tubi, Crackle, will not count those because those are free, and Pluto's free as well.
Exactly. So I don't include them because while they do actually provide a lot of horror, there's no barrier because you can watch those with commercials like you would regular cable television. But for all the other streaming platforms, you can pay to not watch commercials.
Yeah, and then Tubi and Pluto with some of their channels. On top of that, they have Twitch channels where you can watch stuff for free as well, straight off of Twitch.
Exactly. So the problem with these streaming platforms is they can be costly. And
You
that
gotta
is
pick and choose.
you have to pick and choose what you want, or you have to have a really good friend base.
Us.
Exactly. Where friends and family will subscribe to different programs and pay a little bit extra cost. Because streaming platforms know it's not just you and your household, it's you and every other family member or potential friend that you know sharing that platform.
And
So-
they know by ISP and VPNs who's doing it.
Exactly. So there are some streaming platforms that you can pay a little bit extra and ensure that everybody has access to the content. Now, if you cannot do so, then definitely do what you feel is best. But I don't recommend in this environment doing pirating.
Yeah, you really don't. Even with a VPN, they can still find out who you are.
And with how much you have out there right now with content, it's better to not pirate and just either wait for it to come out on home video or anything like that.
And a lot of stuff is so accessible now for just a few dollars if you just want to rent it.
Exactly. Or go to your public library. But the reason why I wanted to focus on the streaming platforms is because they're really going to change how we look at things.
Yeah.
And they're going to change, especially horror, because
That's that middle ground area that usually ends up following just above indie and never hits that blockbuster status unless it's like an Alien or a Predator franchise.
and even then, they're so niche because the only time people are going to go out of their way to see them is if they're true fans. More often than not, for horror fans, they go out of their way to watch it because they enjoy that market.
Yeah. And with Friday the 13th rights reverting back, I have a feeling it's probably going to wind up on a streaming service with whatever happens with that now. Because
Oh, absolutely.
Nightmare on Elm Street, there's a new project in the works and it's with Shudder. So I'm assuming that's going to go there. Peacock and Sci-Fi have the new Chucky series coming out next week.
And the benefit about if you do go to a streaming service like Shudder is it's actually a cheap entry. It's only $5 a month.
Yeah.
And obviously they are not on any of our sponsors. I just like horror that much. But
And one thing I'm curious about with the new Chucky series, it's a sequel to Cult of Chucky. So how's it going to work out with fans of Child's Play with this new series?
oh yeah, I'm definitely going to be curious. And that's what I like about having streaming platforms do all of this. Because at least now we have an opportunity to watch it and not have to worry about paying the exorbitant fees to go to a movie theater. Or waiting the time to have it come out in physical media. Because yes, we do support physical media. Maybe because we're old.
Yeah, we're geriatric millennials.
But we do support physical media, so we do tend to buy everything as it comes out because we can. But at least with the streaming platforms,
The people who don't really care for physical media
have the option.
Yeah.
And so that's an exciting thing. So horror is going to become much more different than what it was back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
It's going to be more accessible, but it's even going to become more of this niche, this niche, this niche. It's going to be more clicky than it's already been.
Exactly. Like, I actually just watched a movie that took place on Zoom for COVID. And surprisingly, it was very well done with everybody on Zoom having to do their own effects. But it shows that you couldn't do that in any other capacity than on streaming.
Yeah. I mean, some of this stuff and the found footage movies are going to find a better home, I think, on streaming than they did in the mainstream.
They do, because at least with found footage, you can have a great deal more flexibility if you have a streaming platform that's going to allow you to let it breathe. Because that's a challenge with Paranormal Activity.
It doesn't breathe. It's going too fast.
It does. The only one that really breathed was the first one.
Yeah.
And
Chronicle, the superhero horror, I will say that breathed as well.
It did. But you don't get that all the time when you're not on streaming. And you find such diamonds out there. Like a few years ago, Veronica,
Yep.
a Spanish horror, was incredible, and it was extremely well done. And it was only available on streaming. And
Can't Speak was a Netflix one.
oh yes. And so streaming is definitely going to give us more options, more opportunities to see horror, and more ways to experience it, especially if they do a la Creepshow. And I'm looking forward to the changes that can come with it, because I kind of feel like without the big blockbuster ones like Michael Myers or anything like that, you need another home for them.
Yes.
Because people are going to go see the Halloween franchise because everybody knows it. But like The Night House, that was a great psychological horror, but not as many people went to see it because it was just in theaters.
Yep.
And people don't want to pay a lot of money for a property that they're not familiar with.
Yeah, The Lighthouse was a definite A24 experimental film. Yes, you had Robert Pattinson in the lead role, but it's one of those, okay, that's one that's, you would have to sit there and go, okay, is this going to be worth my time or not?
Well, exactly. And so you have to think, do you want to spend that cost of entry, or do you want to watch it on streaming? And a lot more people are feeling more comfortable with streaming, because the other benefit of it is you don't have to be fixed to a particular site. You can watch streaming as you're working out. You can watch streaming while you're going through the grocery store. Probably wouldn't recommend it because you'll walk into people.
But I've seen it happen.
I've seen it happen too. You can listen to streams or watch streams while you're actually doing your regular job. There's so much more opportunity for streaming that's going to benefit horror than ever before.
Yeah, it is. Now, as we're continuing on with Halloween month, we have one more to go, and Cruellica has the topic in mind.
The fear of death and the enjoyment of horror. So we will get into that a little bit more, and we'll see you next time. Bye!